Neither of us had the pedigree, but when I asked like what got us in, she was like, I think you're...
That's Joseph, the CEO of LedgerUp, and they do AI-powered billing and revenue automation. He grew up in a small town in North Carolina, and they were mentioned by TechCrunch as one of 9 startups that stood out at their demo day. What did the product look like when you applied?
We had no interface, so it was an entire just backend workflow, basically showing the customer story, but starting off with like...
Here's how they got their first customer.
I could tell I was losing him. I was like, yeah, and like eventually like I'm gonna create like an AI bookkeeper, and he was like, oh. Well, the moment you have that, like, let me know, because, like,
And check out how they use Reddit to keep growing.
Reddit is extraordinarily ruthless in terms of, like, the feedback they give. We got so many comments on that Reddit thread and likes, and people were just like...
What's the top realization from your time at YC?
Just launch. Like, why are you waiting? Dana would tell us that all the time. Things are going to break, and it's always helpful, like, you know, to maybe...
Stay to the end. I'll give you a link to a YC application that's similar in structure to the one that they use that actually got them in. We also go over key metrics that they track.
What are their specific pain points that we're solving for them? Who's the specific persona within that company that we're helping out with? And then from there, you can get a lot of...
key learnings from YC interviews that didn't go so well.
Head of legal at YC, and he was the one interviewing us, and within 3 minutes, he was like, yeah, these guys are just idiots.
I'm Adam O'Donnell. This is the Founder Initiative. Let's go.
Neither of us had the pedigree. I mean, we had strong backgrounds. And Bailey, you know, had a deep understanding of agents and had been working at a startup and previously at Microsoft on this. I had the background as like a controller and a director of finance, so I had the knowledge in that specific vertical. But when I asked like what got us in, she was like, I think your demo looked cool. And that was it. And I was like, and we did the demo in person, which was freaking awesome. It was like, we got to sit down, and it was Diana and Gustav, and we're like, oh yeah, like, and here's us submitting a bill via email, and the agent in the background is like extracting it and putting it into QuickBooks Online. And it was like, okay, these guys are serious enough. There's customers using this, and it actually works. It clearly like worked out some of the bugs. And that was enough to, I'm sure there's a lot of other things, but that's what it felt like got us in. And so I think a magical demo video is fantastic. And it also helps you understand what's the customer journey. And we still record demos all the time. Unique demos, especially with the age of orchestration AI agents, it can go off in so many different directions, and a customer's asking for something unique. And so I think demos is a perfect example.
Now tell me about the demo video that got you in.
We were both dead tired too, and you can tell we're just out of it. But we were like, you know, hey, I'm Joe, I'm Bailey. And you know, of course, if you're applied, you know, it's like, you've recorded this thing 10 times in a row, and someone says, you know, or like mispronounces something, and you're like, start over again. And then eventually you're like on number 11, you're like, screw it, we're just going to go with this one and get back to work.
We don't even care like anymore because you tried so many times.
Yeah, you like look at the, like, you know, the DoorDash founders one is like fantastic, and it's like, okay, well maybe it should be a little step higher. But I think the big thing is like, what are you working on? Why are you the right fit as founders? Why is this product the right fit? And honestly, from my perspective, it's like, do you have a cool demo that we can quickly see and like?
And so you actually showed the screen recording.
Not even on the application. We got. Fortunately, we had someone recommend us. We applied 3 times actually, and each time we were fortunate to have someone recommend us. We had interviews all 3 times. The first time was just terrible. First applied in 2023, and for the summer batch, and we got the interview, but we had not made any progress on the product at all, because we were just like, hey, might as well apply. Like, might as well. And it was a legal application for like creating contracts, basically. And I had experience with this. I was taking a company through a de-SPAC. There were lots of contracts that didn't agree with each other, lots of issues in terms of, you know, like maybe like different clauses or things that provide risk. And like people are trying to create documents always internally, and the legal role is like sometimes a bottleneck for like creating those contracts. And so creating like a centralized repository for that and an easy way to create it, which sounds like a great idea. It's also kind of a tarpid idea and like pretty easy to like steamroll over, but like I do it all with Claude now. So, you know, there's that. We went to the interview. It was the head of legal at YC, and he was the one interviewing us. And within 3 minutes, he was like, yeah, these guys are just idiots. He was kind enough to give us like 8 minutes, but we knew the last 5 minutes. He was like, so what vertical are you going in? Like, what customers do you have? Who have you talked to? We had done none of it. And I was like, that was the most embarrassing moment of my life.
So the very first question he asked is like, what are you working on? And then he said, how many customers have you talked to?
Levy was his last name. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so second interview, Michael Seibel and Pete Kuman were the interviewers. And of course, Seibel is super, like he's going to ask you and interrupt you and like get to like the root cause, which is like fantastic because you're panicking, and he's like going to ask what his real question is. Yeah. The idea there was more attuned to my background, and it was specifically reconciliations for accounting softwares like QuickBooks Online, but having a bank reconciliation with automatic categorization. Anyway, the big concern there was like, hey, we think most likely QuickBooks Online or similar ERP is going to do this themselves, which is a totally fair call out.
And wait, help me with that how did they make that assessment? They made that in like 8 minutes.
Yeah. Honestly, I think they say the first they know within the first few minutes. The last I think they say they know within the first 5. The last 5 are just courtesy. So you have like, and sometimes I've heard of some people where they're like, oh wait, like I mean, for example, like Airbnb is a famous one of like the interview went terribly, and they mentioned like the box of McCain-O's or Captain McCain's and Obama O's. And so like there is an opportunity to like claw it back, but like really you got to be able to describe what you're doing, why it's cool, why it's going to work, and they'll know within the first 5 minutes. That being said, like you have a shot now 4 times a year. So if it doesn't work out, just apply again, like keep on applying. The worst they can say is no, but like you made progress and you're using it as a milestone to like just go again.
Huge. So they in that second interview, Michael Seibel says no because he thinks that it's just going to get swallowed up by QuickBooks Online, like as a feature.
Exactly. And as actually Pete Kuman, I think Michael was actually semi on board. At least it felt like, that, but I think it's a mutual decision, I'm sure. And then the third one was in person. It was awesome. We were in San Francisco.
So you flew up just for that interview?
No, we moved to San Francisco. So we both decided San Francisco is where we want to be. AI is happening. This is the second coming of the internet. Why would we not be here? So we moved, which was the best decision we've made. There's lots of good decisions that were dumb, but a few good ones. And I think joining YC and also moving to San Francisco were like the best. And the interview was in person, which I think we both do better in person. And we were able to describe what we were doing. The big thing was we had launched and we had customers and we had iterated on customers' feedback. We had tangible ROIs on why we were the right fit for these customers. And I remember on the way back, we were so bootstrapped. We were like taking like, the the BART train back, and Diana like messaged us on Google, or she sent us an email and she's like, hey, by the way, like, can you send me like a basically usage of how many of these you've done for your customers on like these transactions categorized. This was
after the interview.
Right after that interview, like 15 minutes later. And so I'm like in the back of the BART, like trying to like get this thing to work. We're going in and under tunnels in like Chinatown. And I'm like trying to get it to work. I think we did miss our stop, but we got the answer back to her while we were there. And then we're just, before we made it, we were like, before we even got back off into the office, we were just like, we're going to knock this out for her. And so, then we sent it back to her, and she called us the next day and was like, hey, or I think it was the day of, and she's like, hey, you're in. And I was like,
what was that feeling like?
It was great. It was honestly like, I think, so the difference is we had actually done our work this time. And so we didn't accept on the spot because we were like, we wanted to make sure this is a commitment. This is, you're agreeing to $1 billion outcome. You're agreeing to take on investors' money. Like, this is not something you can just like be like, oh yeah, sure, might as well. We knew like the amount of commitment this meant, and it meant like leaving that bootstrap mentality behind. And so we called up a bunch of our friends, people who knew us, people who knew business, people we trusted, just to like kind of get an idea of like what they were thinking. And it comes down to like, are you playing to win or playing to play? And it's totally fine to play, and it's really fun. But if you're playing to win, and if you want to take a chance on yourself, and you think now a lot is happening in the world that previously didn't exist, then it makes total sense to just go for it. And you would always look back with regret if you didn't do it. And now I have no regrets. It's been a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of work, but I'm like, this is like by far what I want to be working on. It's awesome.
Man, that's so cool. It's such a cool story. And also the shift of like, they're not doing you a favor if you're a company that's worth being in there, because you have a lot of other options. I know a lot of other investors would have probably loved to have invested in you, or, with the traction that you have, because you were focusing on building a good business. And the outcome, did align with YC at that time. But even if they hadn't invested, that doesn't mean that you're not going to build an amazing company. Yeah, our big thing was like, we were like, oh, we should start a company. What do we think we're worth? We were like $10 million, which is stupid because neither of us had been founders. We had no exits. We had no proof. But that's how much we thought we were worth and our company was worth. And of course, no one was going to give us that money at that valuation. So we're like, well, let's just go off and prove it. And I think that's the big thing is like people are willing to invest in ideas if you can prove yourself. And so, I love that.
And then you go through YC and it's like now your valuation is, much higher. And you can actually, you have proof, you have people coming to you asking to invest. And before, I'm sure we could have gotten an investment, but it would have been at a much lower level. So,
how many founders in the world wanted to get into YC?
Yeah, a lot. a lot. Yeah.
It's less than 1% that get in. I feel
Right.
like it's harder than getting into a top business school.
Yes.
And I think it's actually more impactful in a lot of ways. So I'm
Absolutely. Yeah.
especially as a founder.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can, the connections you get, even if your company doesn't succeed through YC, just getting in, and the learnings you get is like fantastic.
Huge.
So, yes, totally agree.
Like you get into YC, like what did the company look like?
Yeah, we had no interface. So it was an entire just backend workflow, basically showing the customer story, but starting off with like, there was no interface, no way of showing what was happening other than showing the code running in the background, which we did. And literally it was, hey, I have a bill in my email. I forward it on to LedgerUp. LedgerUp extracts it, puts it into my accounting software, and then it just returns back completed. And that was it. There was no interface, and we had no big backgrounds either. It was just literally this demo of like what our customers are using our product for, and that was it.
Dude, that's amazing. No interface.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so cool to me. And so what else did your company look like at the time? How many employees did you have?
It was just us two. So actually it was Bailey, myself, and we had just brought on our first hire, but none of us were getting paid. So it was just like, hey, we're just gonna like have like sweat equity, and we'll like raise or like just like pass out money later on. But yeah, that was the company size. We had about I think 3 customers at that point, and then it was roughly like 2K in MRR and then some promising prospects around that area too. So yeah, it was looking back now, I'm like, wow, like we have come a long way since then.
To get to $500,000. And
Absolutely.
by the way, there's literally a bug in your hair. And
Oh, no way.
Small little. I just want to make sure I get it out.
Yeah. I appreciate it.
I just am like, you know what? I want you to.
If someone's gonna be staring at,
we're in
a bug?
we're in the garage, like anyways.
Yeah,
So
no worries.
I'm sorry.
I've seen one flying around. I'm like, I hope it doesn't like come from my face,
I
but
know,
we're
it's
good.
like, it's because I left this open, leaving that in. The Founder Initiative is literally a startup based in San Francisco, based out of a garage.
All good.
But
All good.
so okay, you get in with that. And what was, if you had to distill like in a couple sentences, the biggest reason that you think that they let you in? Because you said you didn't go to Harvard,
Yeah.
you didn't go to Stanford, you didn't have a previous exit.
At the time, we were both in our mid to late 20s. We had industry experience. So we didn't have the MIT, Stanford backgrounds, but we had a deep understanding of what the problem was and proof that we could solve that problem. So I think like the pedigree and of like the hard work you've put in is also super relevant. Getting actual customers. And then once again, like if you just do the work, you come in with a lot more confidence. I was still doing breathing techniques. Like I remember I was taking pictures because I was like, if we don't get in, I still want to have like memories of like going to the YC office. Like it's a magical moment. But you're still like, saying, oh, don't be nervous. Like you're going to be nervous regardless. But like the confidence of knowing if you don't get in, it's all going to work out because you're going to put in the work and you can reapply. Or just do the company is like, that gives you a lot of confidence going into it. So that's the only thing we really had going for us was just like foolish confidence and a little bit of traction and a demo that had no interface. Basically, that was it.
But you had applied 2 times before, which I love.
Yeah.
And like they're tracking that, which is interesting.
Yeah.
What's the biggest piece of advice that you would say that like what's the biggest thing that you think YC looks for in general that like as advice for a founder applying right now?
They actually will tell you what they want you to build, which is awesome. So if you're like looking for an idea to work on or like think about how they're thinking about the future, like you can align yourself. Like they'll give their requests for startups. I think it does come down to like having a really good like co-founder relationship, having some sort of traction. I can't talk to like, exactly what they're looking for, but I know for like the folks that I saw in the batch, it was like either a super impressive background where they're like, hey, you're so smart, even if you don't like this idea is terrible. And sometimes they'll tell you your idea is terrible. You'll figure it out. Or it's like, hey, you have really good in-depth knowledge in this area that no one else has. And that's going to give you infinite leverage compared to someone else who will spend, 6 months stumbling around before they actually figure out what the actual problem is. And that 6 months in today's world is insane leverage. It compounds but right now it's compounding even faster than before because you can skip over a lot of the other stuff.
Besides the demo, you said the demo was like probably the most important thing for you because
Yeah.
you could show that you actually had it.
Exactly.
Is there anything else in the YC app that you think founders should consider that might be interesting? Like
explain it to people that don't know what you do and see if it makes sense. It's going to the application committee will try and send it to the right person who will understand what the heck you're talking about. So, like if I was applying with biotech, they're going to make sure it goes to the right person with biotech background so they can actually justify, is this an actual like serious company or not? And so that's how like they're kind of like sorting through, like, there's a lot of applications and you just sort through it. I would say our application, we definitely ran through a lot. And I think understanding what your customer is saying helps you articulate what you're doing a whole lot better. Some people are just born great at articulating, or it's a skill they've like learned over time. But for the majority of us, it just requires like brute force and like trying again and again and again to like articulate it. I'm that way for sure. And we had done so many sales calls at that point. I knew what the pitch was. So I knew what customers were like, or I thought I knew part of what the pitch was. You never fully know. So that was super helpful. And then I think we did like one practice interview where we just like got to ask a few questions, but that was it. And I think a lot of founders will like reach out to me and be like, can I do a practice interview? And I'm like, yes, but like, it's not going to help because I'm going to mirror what I think now and not exactly what they're going to ask you. The big thing is like, you should just know your company and know your metrics. And like, if you know all the questions, on their website, like you should be fine, but just know your business basically. It's like that's basically it, because there's going to be, otherwise you're just portraying what you think is going to happen, and that's just going to mislead that founder. They're going to ask a question like, I didn't prep for it, I didn't memorize it. It's like, don't memorize, just understand.
It's got to be authentic because you have to be so obsessed in understanding.
Yeah,
it just flows out naturally.
Exactly.
And they're going to sense the difference too.
Yeah. So oh hey, here's your demo. Like, why doesn't an accountant like doing this? And you're like, well, because I've done it, and I've done this for tons of companies. This process in and of itself takes 15 minutes. There's 25% error rate, which means you have to go back and do it again, or you miss pay, or you have the wrong chart of account. Like, you can get into that detail. They're like, oh, okay, sweet. This person actually knows what they're talking about and can quantify this for a customer and like why it matters. And that's always helpful.
That's so good. Well, what was the biggest principle that you learned at YC that you still apply today? Like,
there's a lot of, at least what I deal with is like fear of rejection, or just like not like okay, what happens if I try this and it just doesn't work? Do I look stupid in front of a bunch of people that I care about? It doesn't matter. Like no one's gonna remember this in 50 years. Like, freaking Tesla won't be around in 200 years probably. Like it eventually it all like comes crashing down at some point. It's all about the journey and like who you become along that journey. And when we got into YC, Bailey and I shook and we're like, this is gonna make us the best versions of ourselves as fast as possible, because it's gonna like pressure cook us. Being like, oh, well, maybe they'll reject this, so I just won't reach out in the first place. Like, my big thing was like, oh, like, what if I reach out to a founder and they're like, this is a dumb idea, and it's a founder that I respect? It's like, it's easier to just not reach out and not figure that out. And that's the wrong way to do it. And so I think that was like a good forcing function of being like, all right, Paul Graham says to grow 10% week over week. That means I have to do this work to make this happen. And if I don't do it, then it's clear I'm avoiding it. And so like having like metrics on that side and guidance and companies in the cohort to like compare yourself against is fantastic.
Huge. Let's talk about product market fit and getting your first customer. Pivoted. You were doing legal tech.
Yeah. So that one was just like, honestly, just something that I thought was interesting. The second one, I think we really niched in on like my experience as a controller and director of finance. The third one, it was like, okay, we're niching in on a set of workflows that's a bit broader in terms of the vision for internal finance and accounting.
But the third time you already had customers.
Exactly.
So the second time, did you have customers?
No customers, other than a few people that were interested, and that was about it.
Interested meaning like they verbally said that they were?
Yeah, they're like, hey, Joe, I like you. I know you're controller. That doesn't mean anything, though. It's like, get a paying customer, and ideally someone that you don't know as a paying customer. That's really hard to do, but like that's so helpful, because then it validates, if you're a good person, you're going to get customers, but like you're not going to build $1 billion company potentially. It's like, it's got to be good, and you can sell it to someone that doesn't know you. It doesn't mean necessarily cold email. It could be like showing up to their office and being like, hey, like, let me show you this to you, or sending like a really good like customized LinkedIn DM. Like, but getting someone to see what you're working on and validate it is so helpful, or getting their thoughts in terms of like iteration and speed. So I think like another lesson was just launch. Like, why are you waiting? Dana would tell us that all the time. It's like, well, so like the website's not perfect. And so I'm like waiting until I get this done, so that way I can launch it on like, launch Bookface and launch YC and get more inbound. And it's like, just launch, like, just do the thing. Things are going to break. And it's always helpful, like, to maybe like you can use that as a forcing function to get your stuff in line and actually like, okay, shoot, we're going to launch on this date. I now have 24 hours to get the website clean. let me like, pull an all-nighter to get that done. But that's super relevant and super helpful. So yeah,
Just get it out there. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Where were you looking for customers?
I had a brother-in-law that was like complaining about, or I was like telling him my idea that we had applied to YC for, and I'm like, I still think we're gonna do it. And he's like, yeah, okay, interesting. And I was like, yeah, and then like I could tell I was losing him. And I was like, yeah, and like eventually like I'm gonna create like it's gonna go into an AI bookkeeper. And he was like, oh, well, the moment you have that, like let me know, because like I do not like my bookkeeper, and we're having issues with that, just like in terms of like scale. Okay, that, yes, I actually have that. We're shipping that like next month. Like, let me do it for you. I don't know if you actually like we didn't have any of that built out, but I like messaged Bailey. I'm like, hey Bailey, I got us a customer. Let's like do this thing. And so that was like our first customer. And then from that, like we had a few really big wins, and it was like, hey, you should talk to this other guy who's having this issue. Basically, just using my network to my advantage.
So you were just like cold outreach, I mean, no, these aren't cold. These are direct
Warm intros,
people
yeah, exact people that I knew, get
How
their
would
thoughts.
you describe it at that point?
The idea.
Yeah, like in an email, is it just like, hey, can I get your feedback on something, or
Yeah.
were you saying like, hey, like check this out?
Feedback, and then I remember recording a video of basically the demo we did for YC of like, hey, here's how this process looks, and put it on Reddit. Reddit is extraordinarily ruthless in terms of like the feedback they give, and people like they don't like being sold stuff on Reddit at all. We got so many comments on that Reddit thread and likes, and people were just like, this is actually super cool, and this hits on a pain point that I'm experiencing with QuickBooks Online. And I was like, like this is fantastic. Like that was a cool, like, people are going to be brutal. Maybe Reddit's the best place to go for advice, because like people will like, add on 25% kindness to whatever they say. But yeah, I remember that being like, I did that like Christmas Eve, I sent out the video on Reddit, and a lot of people.
What was the thread you were doing?
It was like QuickBooks Online, literally like targeted to specifically people in QuickBooks Online, and being like, hey, this is a problem that I'm working on. Here's a Loom video. The best part was it wasn't actually a real demo. It was me in the background with a separate screen where I'm like, remember, it's like upload a bill and the AI will respond back via email with confirmation. I had a separate screen going where I was sending it to the AI agent, and the second screen I click send, found the email, like click send. I'm doing all this like I'm looking at you, like so I didn't like blink from the camera, and then send it back. I'm like, and there's the AI, because like people don't care if it works. People care about if it fixes their problem or not, and you can always build it later on. But it was hilarious because it didn't even exist. I was just like doing it in the background like a puppeteer.
That got the validation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then from there, did you convert any of those that responded? Or
yeah, we converted one. A lot of them were accountants themselves, and that was another lesson, is like accountants are hard to sell in general, especially when it comes to tax season. And we were at the beginning of the year, and it was just like, they're like, hey, listen, like this is awesome, but I've got tax season coming up in April. My work's already starting for that. And it's like the sales cycle just never worked out, unfortunately. Yeah. They're also very frugal, which is like totally understandable, but they're less likely to pay a lot of money for a software where they're like, oh, I can just, do this myself. And yeah, anyway, it's a very interesting industry, and kind of one of the reasons we moved around after that too.
Because I know you eventually ended up pivoting, but the same principle applies of the channel of using Reddit, like just the quick video, getting the actual feedback, and getting, how many comments did you get, would you say?
It was like, I think it was like 50 or 60. And then, yeah, it was all fairly positive comments on Reddit, which is like shocking. The interview itself went for like 15, 20 minutes though. It was interesting. It was like, we did the first 10 minutes. We could tell we're sort of losing him. And we were like, well, we have a demo. And they're like, yeah, that's awesome. Like, let's see the demo. And it worked. And I was like, I mean, obviously it worked because like our customers were dealing with it, but every now and then you get an issue. And they're like, oh, okay, cool. This actually makes sense. And then that helped them understand like exactly what we're trying to articulate. So
it was like going down 10 minutes in, and you thought it's probably going to be over.
Yeah.
And then you show them the demo. Like,
I still thought it felt good, but they were asking us specifics about our customers that I had no idea. And it looked very,
do you have an example? I know.
Yeah. It was like, hey, what industries are your customers in? Like tell me, so you have 8 customers, like what different industries do they exist in? Why do these industries have issues? Any specific verticals you're excited about? And I was, I didn't have any of those numbers off the top of my head. And I was like, shoot, I don't know. But then we're like, oh, hey, we have a demo. And then that's when it was like, okay, here's what LedgerUp does, articulated. And you can imagine, like, as volume increases, LedgerUp becomes more valuable to that team. And so that was the big part.
One question in the YC interview that totally threw you off.
Knowing your customer, like I didn't know my customer as well as I should have. I knew their first names. I knew their kids' names. I knew their, their company. But like when you're flustered, you should know what industry they're in, why it sucks, what they were doing before you, what they're, why you're going to grow with them. Like, yeah, that's like just 101 on knowing your customer. And now what we do internally is like, we'll sit down and we'll have a whiteboard and be like, who are our customers? Who loves us? Why do they love us? Indexing hard on like what size is their team? What size is their industry? How much revenue are they doing? How much ROI are we having for their team? Who on their team loves us the most? Like, it's an internal practice that we now do all the time because it's a signal to what you should be doing and what you're doing wrong right now. And then it's better yet, you'll know, does this customer love me or not? And sometimes you'll be like, at least in the past, we're like, shoot, I don't know if this person like fully loves us. Like, that's an issue. That's not good. You should figure that out. Maybe they're the wrong customer. Maybe you're doing a poor job of like taking care of them as a customer. And so that I think is probably something you should be asking before you even get the YC interview if you have existing customers or users.
What are those specific metrics that you do, and how frequently do you actually look at them?
I would say, this can get so granular, right? Because you're like, okay, first of all, what's the customer name? How much are they paying us? What's the team size? Where are they based? What's the industry? What are their specific pain points that we're solving for them? Who's the specific persona within that company that we're helping out with? How much volume are we doing? Are they fully like onboarded? Are there any issues they're experiencing? And then from there, you can get a lot of like intel on like, okay, if we cease to exist and get hit by an asteroid tomorrow, would this person's life be like, would it suck? And if the answer is like, no, they would figure it out, it's probably not a good business idea. And so I think if it's like, but now it's like, I think we're in a position where it's like, we provide so much value to our customers, with such a good ROI. I feel confident. I'm like, okay, yes, like this is the direction we're heading. And like, we know what customer to look for. And then that speaks to your go-to-market, that speaks to your customer support, that speaks to your current onboarding experience, that speaks to your niche in general and potential opportunities to move up or downstream of your current product. Like, it does everything. Because you can also look at like, okay, how do we find this customer? Like, all of that detail around your customer is just so relevant because it's feedback loop for your entire company and your product. And that's something we should have done.
I love that. It's just that North Star of the impact to the customer.
Yeah.
And on your website, you have like the number of invoices that are sent out. Is that the North Star for ROI? Yeah,
I think it's like, okay, how much, first of all, like there's some stuff that's unspoken and it's just frustrations that no ROI matters. It's like, if you have a massive pain point, even if it's like a small thing and you just hate doing it, sometimes the ROI is like not on paper. It's just like a mental frustration that you hate doing. And then sometimes it's like, it's a mental frustration and on paper it sucks and you can quantify it. So it's like quantifiable versus like actual quantifiable data and cross-referencing those. And so I think sitting down and being like, okay, how much missing revenue did we find? How often did we follow up on invoices? Like, and then you can go into sales calls and you can be like, hey, here's why we're a perfect fit for you. Because you've done an internal case study for someone and you're like, this is like the issues I see within your industry. We've won quite a lot of deals by just knowing our customers so well that on the demo, we're literally showing them what their contract looks like. And they're like, oh my gosh, like this is my exact workflow. And it's like, I know, because I researched you and I cross-referenced you against our existing customers. And this demo is like spot on for you. So I'll have like a contract. I'll like pull like a customer name from their website and I'll be like, hey, here's you invoicing John Deere. And here's what this probably looks like. And they're like, yeah, that's all. That's what that looks like. I'm like, sweet. Let me show you how I click a button and automate what would take you like, an hour or two plus, a cascading number of hours for the continuation of the contract. And that's like such a strong selling point. But you got to know what your customers are. And like, yeah, that's the big part.
It sounds really cool. And I know I have not even asked you this yet, but I can now. I would love to know, like, how did you get the idea for where you are right now? Because you made a pivot. Like, what actually happened?
Oh, I kick myself for this every day. So the first customer I mentioned, we were early on, and they gave us a purchase order to go off and create an invoice in QuickBooks Online for. And at that time, I just had like a very basic AI agent with ChatGPT API. And I was using this as a way of like improving my prompting. Bailey joined in mid-February full-time. And I started January 1st, 2024. And so this was like mid-January. So I was like, you know what? Before he joins, I'm going to have really good prompts based off of just existing work that I'm doing. So created a prompt, ingested the PO, created an invoice in QuickBooks Online. Or it didn't even push to QuickBooks Online. It just suggested what I should do. I went and created on QuickBooks Online. I'm like, hey, here's the invoice for $60,000. And they were like, hey, actually, it should be $40,000. And I was like, shoot. I look like an idiot, and the AI doesn't work. And now I gotta go redo my prompting as well as like apologize. Because at this point, you're like every like little issue you're gonna get in trouble for. Turns out the AI was right. And it was $20K that we actually made them. And I was charging $500 a month. So I just paid myself off for like multiple years. And they were like, this is awesome. But what did I do? I ignored that feeling, that excitement for the customer. And I was like, great, that's going to be one part of my AI bookkeeper. And I should have just niched in on that in January of 2024. And we would have been over 11, 12 months ahead of the game. And so what we continue to see, so that was like the first time I saw it happen. And then what we continue to see is customers, as we onboarded them, especially B2B, would give us their contracts. And we would cross-reference that against their Stripe invoices or QuickBooks Online invoices. Hey, this says you're supposed to be invoicing for $10,000 a month, but you're actually invoicing for like $9,000. Or like there's like some scale up or some usage or some overage. They just consistently fail to do it because the moment people think contract is signed and I created a Stripe subscription, it sucks to do that, but like, okay, and now it's in the background. It's going to like run automatically. It's like, that's not how this works because first of all, you have to follow up to make sure you get paid. So you have a massive AR balance typically. Yeah. But then secondly, the AR balance might be wrong because you actually have an invoice correctly. And so.
And wait, what were you selling at that point? I just want to make sure I
AI
understand.
bookkeeping.
So it was just overall bigger product, AI bookkeeping.
Yeah.
And there was a small niche that came up, which is this problem with like miscontracting, misinvoicing for the actual amount.
Absolutely. Yeah. We were like,
it was a smaller thing.
You
were taking on a bigger thing.
We were taking on a bigger thing. And literally in April of 2024, we were like, yeah, we're definitely going to do AR. And maybe we'll do like a voice agent around AR too to like help collect. And then we're going to get into like, you have these dreams of where it's going to take you, but the reality is if you're going to build a 100x better product and no one's going to touch you, you have to niche in on one specific area. And I'm like, that's like something that we just completely whiffed on was like, oh, hey, AI tools are out now. I'm going to use Cursor and now I can move faster than anyone else. And now I can build this. It's like, no, because it's going to have errors and those errors are going to like hurt your reputation. And I think reputation is the name of the game right now. And so our reputation now is we work with some of the fastest AI companies to take signed contracts, automate the entire invoicing, collections, usage, overage, and push it to all the relevant systems so no one ever has to do that again. In a world where you have to go into Stripe and HubSpot and Salesforce and email and read a massive 10-page PDF, we're saying all you should have to do is click a button and it should be done. And that's a way better selling point because you focus in on a niche, you can do a much better job, and there's a huge ROI there. You know, it's like, okay, now it's not just like cutting costs, it's finding me excess. And I think if you're a company, if you're doing that, like that is an easy sell to someone, or at least an easier sell than like, hey, fire your bookkeeper, which, you know.
It's if your bookkeeper's in the demo or in any case, it's like, why don't you just 10x their time?
Yes, exactly.
And focus in this area. And you're not even saying, come and look in our system. You're saying we're going to meet you where you already are.
Yeah, we're not going to replace any of your existing softwares, which is like fantastic. Like, and that's why the onboarding is like, okay, hey, connect your HubSpot, connect your Stripe, connect your DocuSign, connect your whatever, and we're done. And then, okay, hey, let's like listen to your usage database. Like that might be an extra 15, 30 minutes or whatever. But on our end, it's almost like the Palantir approach where like the first part of it is the services and the last part is like all the software solutions. And so we have basically an AI agent in your Slack that you can chat with, which is like the service piece. Like you're still replacing work that a human would do on their team. And so there's a huge leverage there. But the other issue is like with the AI bookkeeper, the easiest sell we could make was to people who had a fractional bookkeeper or they didn't have a bookkeeper at all. And the only way to get them to move off their fractional bookkeeper was like they effed up bad. And if they screwed up, it was typically because their books were confusing. So we were taking on people with confusing books who were ready to churn and move on to us. But then the other issue is it's just a commodity because I can just outsource this like the tons of other the other bookkeepers out there, or now AI bookkeepers. There's a lot of those now. There were a lot when I was in there too. But if you niche down enough, you're the only one in the room, and it's like.
And you've owned it.
And you've owned it
because you've got every detail. And at this point in that funnel, of what they're working on, you can't miss a detail.
Yeah. And you walk to our website and you're like, yeah, that's me, or that's not me. And that's also totally fine. If 95% of the people who visit say that's not me, but the 5% who are like, that is me, and they book a demo, then I'm like, that's perfectly fine with me. I just want to be the one solution that people come to. Right now it's like either us or you have to hire full-time employees to do all of this. And so I'm like, yeah, like, let's just like not worry about that. Let's get this. I think everyone's trying to 100x their company on the revenue, but only 2x headcount. How do you do that? And I think there's a lot of AI tooling coming out for developers, but not as much for like back office tasks and like operations and finance tasks. And that's where we're really excited to have like a massive impact and really tackle that. So
what's one other YC founder, a company that was in your batch that you were just impressed by?
Rishi at Castle is probably one of my favorites. We're very close with them and their team. And they've indexed hard on like voice AI specifically for mortgage lenders. And I think that focus in on that specific area creates leverage for their company that otherwise would not exist. But additionally, like the tenacity that they have around following up with the right people, flying constantly. You hear all these Y stories of like someone like flying somewhere to meet someone in person or having a ridiculous number of conversations to land that one deal. But that one deal opens up a plethora of other opportunities. That's one person from our batch that I really respect and love working with. Yeah, Rishi's awesome. So that's my one from S24. We work with a ton of other YC startups and other batches, but that was a hard one. That was a hard one.
Man, I know. I put you on the spot, and I know Varsha.
I love everyone. Yeah, Varsha's also there. I feel like I can't say her because she's already, she's already recommended me to hop on the podcast. So it was interesting because we had a lot of YC customers when we moved from the AI bookkeeping to this. We had to let them go. I made the first call to Kosh over at Winley. He was so active in giving feedback, talking through the vision. He was the first person I called when I was like, okay, we're going to go in this new direction. I got to let everyone go. And he goes, I called him, I was like, hey man, like we really sat down. I had a great Christmas. I had a lot of thought, discussed with Bailey, like kind of like what we're doing. And I thought about what you said. He told us like play to win. And I was like, so, just want to have like a brief conversation. He goes, are you firing me? And he was like, and then before I could say anything else, he goes, F yeah, man, let's go. And I was like, immediately the hardest conversation I thought there's going to be, I just was like, I'm going to get it out of the way. The rest of them are going to be, it's going to be, easy from here. Not the truth, actually. There's a few people who got really mad, but like that conversation and someone being like, I want you to be the best version of you. And it's an inconvenience for me, but I know you're going to take care of me on the offboarding, but like, I want you to be successful. He's now on our investor updates because I freaking love the guy. And I'm like, the fact that you were so happy for us finding what we needed to find and playing to win. It's like, that was an awesome relationship. And the rest were like 99% of them were just like, heck yes, like go like become like the best version of yourself. I'm not going to hold you back. Now we have customers who, will message our AI agent Ari and be like, I love you, Ari. And I'm like, having a customer say they love your product to an AI agent that lives in their Slack and all their systems is like the weirdest feeling, but like it provides confirmation that, just doing something hard like that and having those hard conversations. I've never once regretted having a hard conversation. It's just, getting it out of the way, like just your life feels better.
Man, I love that. Yeah. And I know you've said at the beginning that like it maybe we're similar in that we both struggle with caring what people think too much.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And I love how it's like when you lean against that and you're like, no, I'm going to just do the right thing and let the chips fall where they are. Like you let go of $250,000 in ARR.
Yeah.
And now the growth is even more.
It's a good thing if you feel that way. It means you're a human and you're not like a sociopath. And actually it means like when you should feel that way. If you're just like, yeah, screw all the customers who put their faith in me. You have bigger issues to worry about. So you should feel that way. The other good thing is like when you have that fear and that emotion, it actually means you have a superpower because it means when you do it, you're going to do it with care. And my cold emails that I've done for folks that like manually, like, oh my gosh, they're super well written because I have a reaction if I see a bad email of like, I'm embarrassed sending that. And like the empathetic side of me is like embarrassed sending that. And so I think like that's a big piece is like use that as a superpower. Like if you care that much, that's a great thing. Get over the fear piece, but like use that as a way of perfecting your craft.
To get the YC application that is based on the structure that they use to get in, direct message me on LinkedIn. I'm doing this for multiple reasons, but one, I really want to get to know the people who are listening, and I want to keep getting better at asking the right questions so I can help founders and future founders hit product market fit and get funded. Once again, Adam O'Donnell at LinkedIn. Thank you. Boom.